The vice presidential candidates have now had their biggest moment in the spotlight, and that's where we begin our political conversation this week with Jean Beaupre of Xavier University, Howard Wilkinson, WVXU.org political columnist. Gentlemen, was there a winner? Was there a loser? Howard.
I think it was a wash, Tom. I mean, I really do. I think it was pretty much a dead even tie. I mean, both of them came out and did pretty much what they wanted to do. They made their points. In the end, it's not the vice presidential candidates who are going to make or break this election. It's the guys at the top and what they say and do. This is sort of a sideshow. And, you know, I thought it was interesting. I thought there were moments where both candidates said things that could reverberate against their campaigns, but I don't think they did any permanent damage.
I agree with that. I also think that each of them need to achieve something, and I think they both did. I think that Ryan had to show that he could function on a national stage, and he did. He took hits, but he also, you know, he landed a few blows, and I think the senator, you know, managed to establish himself and maybe even slow down what people perceive to be the momentum shifting to the Romney side. So, you know, I think both of them had victories. I think you also have to say win with whom, and I think really we're at the point where we're talking about swing votes, and I think that's a lot harder to discern.
And that's a very small group of people.
Right.
Certainly after the presidential debate, many people said Mr. Romney won that debate, and certainly that there was the feeling that Mr. Biden, Vice President Biden, had to come in and show that he could prop up the base. He could do that sort of thing. Did he do that?
Well, I think he did do that to a certain extent. I mean, you know, Joe Biden is very popular with the Democratic base, particularly blue-collar voters in a lot of parts of Ohio and a lot of parts of the Rust Belt, Great Lakes states. And I think he did that fairly well. But again, I say, it's the guy at the top of the ticket who has to make the case.
Right, and I think that's coming up in this coming week. I think the coming week will really be telling. Certainly the president can't afford a second bad appearance.
No.
And in a sense, I think Governor Romney can skate a little bit, you know, coming this week, but he also can't falter.
Much has been made of the body language of the vice president during the debate. Does it really matter one way or the other in the long run?
Let me just say, I think body language may be important than the words that come out of their mouth sometimes.
In a lot of cases,
yeah. You know, we're at the point where people have heard the issues over and over again. In fact, the candidates are having a hard time burrowing down any deeper. So how somebody looks, whether they're grinning or whether they're looking down at their piece of paper, you know, or what they're doing, you know, this starts to become who would be the better leader. You know, and that's body language and power and speech and those kinds of things.
I mean, there have been cases where it made a big difference.
Right.
George H.W. Bush in 1992, checking his watch, looking at his watch. Is this thing over yet? And Al Gore against George W. Bush, rolling his eyes all the time. That had an impact. I didn't see anything in the vice presidential debate that rose to that level.
So when we get to the debates in the upcoming week and the final two presidential debates, what does each of the candidates, Mr. Obama and Mr. Romney, have to do to shore up the base or pull ahead or basically pull out a win?
Well, I think first they have to do no harm. You know, they have to try not to hurt themselves, and I think that's key. But it's a different forum this time, and so they have to demonstrate a skill that, at least to date, on a national stage, they haven't had to do, which is like talk to real people and respond to them.
Exactly.
And, you know, some people have that chemistry, some don't. So I think that'll be interesting to see.
That is a big factor. This is a town hall type debate where actual voters will get up and ask questions. You might say that Obama has more experience at this, is better at it. For Romney, it's going to be kind of a different thing. It doesn't happen. You don't see that much at Romney campaign events, but you do at Obama campaign events, and he's very good at it.
The idea, speaking of debates, that we're going to have debates coming up in the coming weeks with the U.S. senatorial candidates, Senator Sherrod Brown, the Democrat, and of course Josh Mandel, the Republican state treasurer right now. Both of those are going to be televised on Channel 9. What does each one need to accomplish in those particular forums?
That's it.
Well, in Josh Mandel's case, I think what he has to establish that the campaign probably hasn't really done yet is that he is ready for this job in the United States Senate, that he understands the issues, that he's on top of the issues. In Sherrod Brown's case, Sherrod's been around a long time, but he has to defend his record, and Mandel's going to hold his feet to the fire.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that Mandel will, for the first time, with the senator across from him, with an audience like this, have to explain why he's gone from office to office so quickly, why he's already seeking a United States Senate position, you know, those kinds of things. And I'm sure they'll rehearse all this and he'll have his answers. I think the question is whether they're convincing or not, and whether he can actually penetrate, you know, the senator's record and make some ground on that.
And Mandel has to look and sound senatorial.
Right.
Well, how much impact on the senatorial race is the presidential race going to have?
Well, I think it will to a certain extent. I mean, if Obama wins by, you know, a substantial margin in Ohio, I think certainly that's going to help Sherrod Brown. I don't think they're necessarily tied together, although the Mandel campaign has spent a lot of money saying, look, you know, he's voted with the Obama administration 95% of the time, and they're trying to pull those voters who are not happy with the Obama administration, the independents and the swing voters.
I think that's true. I think probably the great advantage that the president holds for Senator Brown is if he can get the vote out. I mean, he is the draw to bring out the Democratic base, and that's key, and that probably lets the senator focus on other areas. I think then the question is there some advantage for the president bringing some swing votes along that then go down to Brown? And
there's one other thing that's very important with the Obama campaign in Ohio. They've been hanging their hat on the auto industry rescue, and the fact that saved a lot of jobs, created new jobs, and Sherrod Brown obviously voted for that and has been, you know, jumping on that bandwagon. And if he can ride that the way Barack Obama is riding it in Ohio, it's going to be very good for him.
But Republicans would say that basically it's John Kasich and his economic plans that turned the state around, that reduced the unemployment rate, and not President Obama. There's a big debate between the two parties, the leaders of two parties on that point.
There's a big debate in the Republican Party about that. I mean, you know, John Kasich wants to take credit for Ohio's better than average economic recovery. But Mitt Romney, on the other hand, is running a campaign basically telling people things aren't very good. But you have the Republican governor of Ohio out, you know, touting how wonderful things are in Ohio. So you've got kind of a mixed message coming out of the Republican side.
So what do voters make sense of that? How do they decipher all these different messages that are coming out in the conflicting viewpoints here?
I think a large number of voters have already made up their mind. And I mean, I keep going back to this, but I think, you know, you cannot win in this state with just your base. You know, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, it is the swing vote that's in play there. And we've talked about so many factors just in this few minutes that could be affecting the swing. I think that's very hard to determine. Look how close both races are at this point.
Well,
that's why this is a swing state.
Right.
This is why this is a battleground state, because of those swing voters.
Well, one other element of the battleground essence would be the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals ruling this week that voters who cast ballots in the wrong place or somehow messed up because of poll worker error, they have to be counted, and there's voting 3 days before the election. Important, not important, and why? Are we setting ourselves up for another Chad incident like we had before in Florida?
Well, I think there's potential for that. I'm not convinced that it's going to be that bad because, you know, most of the county boards of elections around Ohio have put procedures in place that are going to cut down on the number of provisional ballots that are cast in the first place. It's not going to be as large a number as it was 2 years ago or 4 years ago. So I think, I'm not sure it's possible, but I tend to doubt it.
I think the only potential effect in terms of voter turnout and that sort of thing is, and I'll tell you where I see this, is even up at school, up at Xavier, when students worry about where am I going to get challenged when I go about, you know, my ID and that sort of thing. Well, I think that's true for a certain group of voters. So it may scare some voters away.
If it intimidates voters, it will scare some of them away.
Well, the other element we have in play is certainly voter applications for ballots were mailed to every resident of the state. How much of an impact is that having or not having on this election, do you think?
Tom, it's having a major impact. You know, by election day, I think 1/3 of the vote will have already been cast in Ohio. And that's a whole lot. And it's locking down votes right now, you know, weeks out. And it's having a major impact.
It has the potential, if the campaigns are savvy enough, to let them focus on those people, not focus on those that have voted, and go focus on those people that have not yet voted.
Do we have a situation where we need to go back to just voting on Election Day, except in hard circumstances? Kentucky doesn't have any early voting. Indiana just started it. Ohio has it, but some other states do not. Do we need to go back to that, or is
No, it's not going away. Right. I mean, it's never going to go away because the campaigns like it.
Yeah.
They really do. I mean, if they're good at organizing it, as Gene says, they can lock down their vote before something terrible happens that hurts a candidate. The votes are already in the box.
It even in this case, it was interesting to me, it even affects the down ticket races, because when my wife and I applied for an absentee ballot, 48 hours later, we had 14 pieces of mail in our mailbox, and it was all down-ticket candidates. I mean, this is the only thing those folks generally have. They can't buy TV time. They can't afford it.
Okay, so if one-third of the voters have already cast their ballots, what about all these ads? Are the ads going to do any good, the negative ads that are coming out right now, or are they wasting their money, so to speak?
Well, my opinion is that the closer to Election Day you get, the less effective these ads become. I remember being in Charlotte at the Democratic National Convention, and Jim Messina, Obama's campaign manager, came to the Ohio delegation one day and said, look, 2 or 3 weeks before the election, everybody in America is going to want to take their TV set and throw it out the window.
Right.
He said the only thing that matters in the last weeks of the campaign is personal contact with voters, from people they know or people they can associate with or people that they identify with. And that's what's going to matter, not millions of dollars of TV ads.
Which is why taking some number of the electorate out and not having to hit them, I mean, you'd be so much wiser spending money. I mean, like, I'm not a campaign manager, but you'd be so much wiser just building a huge force and going door to door. Just invite them in for dinner.
Door to door, direct mail, telephone banks, whatever it takes to make personal contact with voters, but not just any kind of personal contact with people that they know or are of similar backgrounds or similar interests, and who can talk one-on-one to voters.
Quite a campaign so far, quite a campaign in the days and weeks ahead. Howard, Gene, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.